All right, so we are live on YouTube, and I have the YouTube chat on my phone here, ready for people. We'll see how this goes. So we are live on YouTube, and I have the YouTube chat on my phone here, ready for. There we go. Need that. Oh, okay, somebody's here. All right. Hello, Metika. Welcome. I bet you this is much nicer for you to be since you're in Ireland, a bunch of hours earlier. Hello, Zamario. Welcome. We also have Kurt here with us, live in studio. So we're just giving it a couple minutes for people to come in. Usually wait until about 5 after. Metika, yeah, 11 p.m. instead of 3 p.m., right? Or 2 or 11 a.m., I should say. All right. Hello, Gayatri. Welcome.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, Zamario. Welcome. We're just waiting for people to come before we get started. We have, we're merging two communities here. We're merging Aya's Charlotte Buddhist Vihara community and my Magaseka community. So we have people who are used to coming onto my streams on YouTube. They're on YouTube chat, and then we have people in the Zoom. So we're going to be doing some joint Dhamma practice together. Those of you who are in the chat in the YouTube, please say hello. Seems like there's we have more people on the YouTube than have said hello. I'd like to see who's here. I do also recognize that there is a bit of a lag too. The people on the YouTube are gonna hear me, I think, probably like 7 to 10 seconds later, something like that. I can see myself. Well, maybe it's about 5 or 6 seconds. I just saw myself scratch my nose 5 or 6 seconds later. All right. All right, so let's get started. So the two things that are being merged here are fairly similar. At the very least, Dhammapalooza, what I usually do Monday nights from 8 to 10, is 2 hours long, and it has a variety of different things, depending on how the night goes. But the Aya's session is usually some, like some level of meditation, Dhamma talk, and Q&A. So, which Dhammapalooza usually has all of those. Although sometimes if people don't have questions, we read suttas, which is always a very good thing. And why don't we? So usually we start out with asking people who are here. So we have, I don't know, 6 or 7 people on the YouTube. We have a couple of people on Zoom. We have one person here with me. So now is the time if you have any questions you'd like me to answer, any topics, Buddhist topics you'd like me to discuss, and if nobody has anything, maybe we can read some suttas. I know Aya usually does the meditation first, but I actually tend to like to get started a little bit before I do the meditation. This might mean that people come later during the meditation, but we'll see how it goes. And I'm here for 4 more weeks, and we'll see. We'll adjust and track and see what we can do that works for the most people. So if you have any questions, comments, or topics you'd like me to discuss, if you're on the YouTube, type it in the chat. If you're on the Zoom, you can, voice your question if you like, or just type it in the chat. It's up to you. And we'll give it a couple of minutes for things to come in. And if nothing, then maybe we'll read a sutta. Actually, usually I start out Dhammapalooza with a little chant. So why don't I do that? Let me see. I think I haven't shared screen on Zoom in ages, but let me see here. There's Makaseka. Let's do a short one. Let me share screen for those on Zoom. Well, and also on YouTube, you should be able to see this. Can everybody see the screen? Let's see. Oh, okay, well, it's on the YouTube, so people should be able to see it. So let's start out with the chanting. Ata Maha Purisa Vitaka. So this is the 8 great people thoughts. So 8 great thoughts of 8 thoughts of a great person. Apicchayasayang Dhammo Nyayang Dhammo Mahicchasa Santuttayasang Dhammo Nyayang Dhammo Asantuttasa Pavivittasayang Dhammo Nyayang Dhammo Sanganikaramasa Araddhaviryasayang Dhammo Nyayang Dhammo Utsitassa Upattitasayang Dhammo Nyayang Dhammo Muttasatissa Samahitasayang Dhammo Nyayang Dhammo Asamahitassa Panyavato Ayang Dhammo Nyayang Dhammo Dupanyassa Nippaparanchara Masayang Dhammo Nippaparancharatino Nyayang Dhammo Papanchara Massa Papancharatino. Oh, English. This Dhamma is for reducing desire, not for increasing desire. This Dhamma is for increasing contentment, not for increasing discontentment. This Dhamma is for cultivating seclusion, not for becoming sociable. This Dhamma is for becoming energetic, not for becoming lazy. This Dhamma is for developing mindfulness, not developing unmindfulness. This Dhamma is for developing composure, not for making restlessness. This Dhamma is for increasing wisdom, not for decreasing wisdom. This Dhamma is for delighting in freedom from impediments, not for delighting in impediments. Okay. So I see nobody has anything, either on YouTube or on Zoom. So why don't we read a sutta?
I have a question, Bhante.
Okay, Jared.
I'm working on memorizing suttas in English. Do you have any tips?
Working on memorizing suttas in English. Well, I think the only tip that I can give you is to try to learn, the various memorization techniques. Right, that's what I did when I first moved to the monastery to become a monastic. I just started reading about all different techniques and trying them and just trying to, see what works. And I think the most important thing when you're trying to memorize something is that you are kind of committing to recalling it on a regular basis. Because if you don't, you'll start forgetting it. You'll start losing it, at least to a certain degree. I spent the 4 paritas, the Karaniyametta Sutta, Mahamangala Sutta, Ratana Sutta, and Mahajayamangala Sutta. I had to memorize those 4 when I became a monastic, because these are the 4 most commonly chanted, like blessing chants, paritas, etc., protection chants. And I spent, especially for Ratana Sutta, which is the longest one, I spent probably 2 or 3 months every day memorizing line by line, just really memorizing. And then I barely ever chanted it again. But every once in a while, when I do chant it with people, which is like once or twice a year, I am surprised at how much I do remember, about 60 to 70% of it off the top of my head. But that the important thing is that you memorize something so that you can recall it. If you're memorizing it just because you like it, well, that's good, but it's so that you can recall it. It can be in your head. It can be in your your head whenever you need to. You can have Dhamma there. That's why it is good. It's good and important to be able to reflect and to be able to have that in your head. Like when I do that, the things that I feel the most important or that call to me the most are easily the ones I have the most memorized. And I didn't necessarily use any fancy technique for that. But there are lots out there. There's a great book called Moonwalking with Einstein that I read in I think I was a Samanera when I read it. And it's about this guy who, this journalist who found out about these competitions where people memorize like phone books or whatever. They do these like crazy memorization techniques. And this led him down this rabbit hole of kind of investigating how humans have memorized things. And not surprisingly, there was about 3 or 4 pages on Buddhist monks. Because, Buddhism, for 500 years was only transmitted orally. And still to this day, it's very important in the Buddhist world, memorization. As a Westerner who got ordained in the West and who was a bit older, I was exempt from the normal levels of memorization. But like in Sri Lanka, they're usually kids too, so it's a bit easier. But in Sri Lanka and places like you have to memorize like the whole Dhammapada and things like that. You have to do because you'll be quizzed on it at your ordination. The preceptor will just, come up with a random line. Okay, start chanting from there. And so I think it's a good thing, but the purpose of it is to remember it so you always have the Dhamma with you, right? And so whatever technique works for your mind is what works for your mind. That's my advice in that way.
Quick question. Can you put that chant that you just said in the chat?
The book?
Yeah.
Okay. That's interesting. But has there really not been somebody on the YouTube live chat for like 10 minutes? Or is there something going on with it? I want to check it out. Moonwalking, like Michael Jackson with Einstein. There you go. And weird title for an interesting book. But yeah. All right. So let's read a sutta. And then after we read the sutta, we can do some meditation. Very important sutta. One that's overlooked in some ways. But very important to understand the nature of this mind and the nature of our craving. Let me share the screen here. This is translated by Bhante Sujato as fodder, by Bhikkhu Bodhi as bait. So the fodder is the bait here. Very important sutta. Majjhima Nikaya number 25. So I have heard. At one time the Buddha was staying near Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's monastery. There the Buddha addressed the mendicants. Mendicants, Venerable Sir, they replied. The Buddha said this, mendicants, a trapper doesn't cast bait for deer, thinking, may the deer enjoying this bait be healthy and in good condition. May they live long and prosper. Could you imagine This is like a hunter, somebody setting traps for a deer. It's like, may they be happy and live long. No, they're catching them to eat them, right? To get their parts. A trapper casts bait thinking, when these deer intrude on where I cast the bait, they'll recklessly enjoy eating it. They'll become indulgent. Then they'll become negligent. And then I'll be able to do what I want with them on account of this bait. And indeed, hello, Rick Thorne. Good to see you over here. Usually see you on Empty Cloud live streams. It was good to see you. All right. They'll become indulgent, then they'll become negligent, and then I'll be able to do what I want with them on account of this bait. And indeed, that first herd of deer intruded on where the trapper cast the bait and recklessly enjoyed eating it. They became indulgent, then they became negligent, and then the trapper was able to do what he wanted with them on account of that bait. Hello, Visaka. Welcome. So we're doing one of your favorite activities. We're reading through a sutta.
Thank you. Thank you.
We're on Majjhima Nikaya number 25, if you want to follow along.
Got it.
Make sure to remember to mute. This is one of the things on Zoom that we often forget.
Am I not muted? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, yikes. Okay, I'm sorry. Hold on. I got to figure it out. Stop video, mute. Gotcha. Got it.
Okay. All right. And indeed, the first herd of deer intruded on where the trapper cast the bait and recklessly enjoyed eating it. They became indulgent, then they became negligent, and then the trapper was able to do what he wanted with them on account of that bait. And that's how the first herd of deer failed to get free from the trapper's power. Then a second herd of deer thought up a plan. The first herd of deer became indulgent and failed to get free from the trapper's power. Why don't we avoid eating the bait altogether? Avoiding dangerous food, we can venture deep into the wilderness region and live there. And that's just what they did. But when it came to the last month of summer, the grass and water ran out. Their bodies became much too thin, and they lost their strength and energy. So they went back to the same place where the trapper had cast the bait. Intruding on that place, they recklessly enjoyed eating it. And that's how the second herd of deer failed to get free of the trapper's power. This is a very important one. This is actually a really interesting message here. Right? People will often think, well, I know the way I get rid of things is I just go into the woods and hide there and it'll just go away. No. Because something happens and you fall back, you come back from the wilderness, you fall back on your old habits and you fall hard. Right? So this is not about, the practice is not about trying to avoid an escape. Because if you try, eventually you're going to not be able to escape. This is very important. Intruding on that place, they recklessly enjoyed eating it, and that's how the second herd failed to get free from the trapper's power. So a third herd of deer thought up a plan. The second herds of deer failed to get free from the trapper's power. Why don't we set up our lair close by the place where the trapper has cast the bait? Then we can intrude on it and enjoy eating without being reckless. We won't become indulgent. Then we won't become negligent. And then the trapper won't be able to do what he wants with us on account of that bait. And that's just what they did. So the trapper and his companions thought, wow, this third herd of deer is so sneaky and devious. They must be some kind of unnatural spirit with psychic power. For they eat the bait we've cast without us knowing how they come and go. Why don't we surround the bait on all sides by staking out high nets? Hopefully, we might get to see their lair, where they go to hide out. And that's just what they did. And they saw where the third herd of deer had their lair, where they went to hide out. And that's how the third herd of deer failed to get free from the trapper's power. But these deer thought they were high and mighty, or that they were tricksy, and thought that they could hide really close. Right? The second herd thought they could run away from it. This herd thought that they could be tricky and live close and be sneaky. But nah, the trapper, hard to beat the trapper. So then the fourth herd of deer thought up a plan. The first, second, and third herds of deer failed to get free of the trapper's power. Why don't we set up our lair somewhere the trapper and his companions cannot go? Then we can intrude on where the trapper has cast the bait and enjoy eating it without being reckless. We won't become indulgent. Then we won't become negligent. And then the trapper won't be able to do with them what he wants on account of that bait. And that's just what they did. So the trapper and his companions thought, wow, this fourth herd of deer is so sneaky and devious, they must be some kind of unnatural spirits with psychic power. For they eat the bait we've cast without us knowing how they come and go. Why don't we surround the bait on all sides by sticking out high nets? Hopefully we might get to see their lair, where they go to hide out. And that's just what they did. But they couldn't see where the fourth herd of deer had their lair, where they went to hide out. So the trappers and his companions thought, if we disturb this fourth herd of deer, they'll disturb others, who in turn will disturb even more. Then all of the deer will be free from this bait we've cast. Why don't we just keep an eye on that fourth herd? And that's just what they did. And that's how the fourth herd of deer, free from the trapper's power. I've made up this simile to make a point. And this is what it means. Bait here is a term for the 5 chords of sensual pleasure. These are pleasant experiences of the senses: eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind. All right, so this is the Buddha says that lay people are endowed with the 5 chords of sensual pleasure. Now, obviously, so are monastics, but monastics are supposed to be practicing to let go of it. The Buddha doesn't force lay people to let go of the 5 chords of sensual pleasure. And this bait, this is actually something that you see multiple places in the suttas, especially in the Samyutta Nikaya. In the beginning, there's a wonderful sutta, a small sutta, because it's in the beginning verses when when devas come to the Buddha. A deva comes to the Buddha and does like a little rap battle with him. So the devas will come and they'll do some kind of pronouncement. And the one deva comes and says, short is a person's life. Old age and death are closing in. One should do deeds of merit that bring about bliss. And then the Buddha comes up and says, short is the human life. Old age, sickness, death closing in. One should drop the world's bait and seek for peace. And then he drops the mic. You see in the beginning of the Samyutta Nikaya, you just see like dozens of these suttas where where devas will come and make a pronouncement, and the Buddha just kind of is like, yeah, that's okay, but this is better. But this is the Buddha's encouragement is to drop the bait. Even all these deers, even the fourth herd, they're still going for it. Although the fourth herd is not doing it recklessly, it's doing it mindfully. But the Buddha wants us to drop the bait, drop the world's bait. If you are a seeker of peace, if your quest is for peace, you drop the world's bait. Bait is the term for the 5 kinds of sensual stimulation. Trapper is the term for Mara, the wicked. Of course, Mara is the trapper. This is why if you know the suttas, you don't even have to wait for the Buddha to explain it, because when he's talking about the trappers, he says, we have to be careful about this fourth herd because they might lead other deer to be free from our traps. Right? Mara does not like that. When the Buddha first came into the world, Mara's like, oh, you've become awakened. Good. Now go die. Go away. You don't have to stay around. What are you staying around for? No, just go. Just go. The world's fine. Don't worry about it. And then, of course, obviously the Buddha did stay. And he told Mara that he wouldn't go until he had the fourfold assembly and the Dhamma and discipline were well practiced and well understood. Hello, Preston. Welcome. So Maras are not big fans of people who are trying to escape sensual pleasure, who are trying to escape samsara. So they try to, this is why they come up with all of their traps. Trapper is the term for Mara, the wicked. Trapper's companions is a term for Mara's assembly. Deer is a term for ascetics and Brahmins. Now the first group of ascetics and Brahmins intruded on where the bait and the material delights of the world were cast by Mara and recklessly enjoyed eating it. They became indulgent, then they became negligent, and then Mara was able to do what he wanted with them on account of that bait and the material delights of the world. And that's how the first group of ascetics and Brahmins failed to get free of Mara's power. This first group of ascetics and Brahmins is just like the first herd of deer, I say. So then the second group of ascetics and Brahmins thought up a plan. This first group of ascetics and Brahmins became indulgent and failed to be free from Mara's power. Why don't we avoid eating the bait and the world's material delights altogether? Avoiding dangerous food. And obviously, this is not like poisonous food. This is like delightful food, like food that is, food that is liable to bring up craving. Avoiding dangerous food, we can venture deep into the wilderness region and live there. And that's just what they did. They ate herbs, millet, wild rice, poor rice, water lettuce, rice bran, scum from boiling rice, sesame flour, grass, or cow dung. They survived on forest roots and fruits, or eating fallen fruit. It's like what the Buddha did when he did his 6 years of ascetic practices. But when it came to the last month of summer, the grass and water ran out. Their bodies became much too thin, and they lost their strength and energy. Because of this, they lost their heart's release. Cheto vimutti, this is release of mind. Right, so this is commonly connected with metta cheto vimutti, release of mind through metta. So this is like, what are you releasing through metta? Ill will, anger, etc. So because they're so emaciated, because they're in like a survival mode, they've lost any kind of calmness of mind, any tranquility, right? Any ability to have that deep wisdom, to develop that, because they're all wrapped up. I experience even just a little bit of this. If I'm in a place for a long time that's vegetarian and it's really hot and I'm like losing my electrolytes, I just go totally muddle-minded. And it's really hard to be mindful when you're muddle-minded because you just don't have the energy or the desire. And this is why. But when it came to the last month of the summer, their bodies became too thin. They lost their strength and energy. And because of this, they lost their heart's release. So they went back to the same place where Mara had cast the bait and the material delights of the world. Intruding on that place, they recklessly enjoyed eating them. This reminds me of an experience I saw at Bhavana one time. A Thai forest monk came. He was a young guy, and he's a very highly trained Thai forest monk and had been under many restrictions for many years. Then he came to Bhavana, a place where there were no restrictions. And I remember I walked into the office one time and him and one of the other monks at Bhavana, they were watching like a movie on their movie screen. And I was like, oh, I see. So out of sight is not out of mind fully. Right? This is the important thing. We understand, right? You can run away all you want, but you don't overcome by running away. You overcome by facing it, knowing it, understanding it. This is how we talked about before. We talked about gratification, danger, and escape, right? You have to know something deeply, both why it's gratifying, why it's pleasurable, why it's dangerous, and how to escape that. So this is very important to do. Like, I've just heard so many stories. A monk was like in the jungle for 20 years, comes out, finds a woman, gets married, and disrobes and gets married. It's like, well, what was he doing in the jungle for those 20 years? I don't know. It is what it is. But this is why, and again, right? The monks did all these things that you don't do as a Buddhist monastic. A Buddhist monastic, it's about balance, the middle way. So you're supposed to have the food that you need for your health, the health of your body. You don't need to indulge, but nor do you need to make yourself so thin and ragged and malnutrition. That's not good either. Neither is good for development of samadhi and insight. All right. Intruding on that place, they recklessly enjoyed eating the bait. That's how the second group of ascetics and Brahmins failed to get free of Mara's power. Gayatri has a question. And yes, I am paying attention to the YouTube. Can that bait be anger as well? I feel like the second group of ascetics, when I am low on energy, I get frustrated and lose my metta. I literally watch myself losing it. I know I have to be skillful. Yeah. This is, anger, resentment, attachment, all these things can be part of that. Yes. The reason being is, when a person in this situation does not have the ability to be fully mindful and aware, even if you're trained in that very well, you can still, if you're really good at it, you start to realize that you're making bad decisions. Like when I tried my Tudong, my Charaka, and I got to the point where I was so wacky because I had, I was completely dehydrated. I had no electrolytes. My mind was totally muddled. And I was like, oh no, gotta keep going. And all of a sudden, my mindfulness kicked in briefly. And it's like, wait a second. You can't go anywhere. This is over. All right. So, mindfulness can jump in there, but it's very hard to be clearly aware and mindful when the energy is not there. right? When the nutrition's not there, when all this stuff is not there, it's very easy to fall for the traps of Mara. So then the third groups of ascetics and Brahmins thought up a plan. The first, second groups failed to get free of Mara's power. Why don't we set up our lair close by the place where Mara has cast the bait and those material delights of the world? Then we can intrude on it and enjoy eating it without being reckless. We won't become indulgent, then we won't become negligent, and then Mara won't be able to do what he wants with us on account of that bait and those material delights of the world. And that's just what they did. Still, they had such views as these. The cosmos is eternal. The cosmos is not eternal. The world is finite or infinite. The soul and the body are the same thing. The soul and the body are different. Or that after death, the realized one exists or doesn't exist, or both exists and does not exist, or neither exists nor does not exist. All right, so this is, these are a group of monastics who are fairly advanced, I should say. Like, they're kind of smart, they kind of know what they're doing, but they still have wrong views. So they're easily trapped. And that's how the third group of ascetics and Brahmins failed to get free from Mara's power. So like a croissant or a beautiful woman or man or whatever, was not enough, was not a trap. They saw through that trap. They were mindful about that. But the mental, views and beliefs, right? Sakaya Diti, identity views, beliefs, they fell for that trap. And that's how the third group of ascetics and Brahmins failed to get free of Mara's power. This third group of ascetics and Brahmins is just like the third herd of deer. Then a fourth group of ascetics and Brahmins thought up a plan. The first, second, and third group of ascetics and Brahmins failed to get free of Mara's power. Why don't we set up our lair somewhere where Mara and his assembly cannot go? Then we can intrude on where Mara has cast the bait and those material delights of the world and enjoy eating without being reckless. We won't become indulgent, then we won't become negligent, and then Mara won't be able to do what he wants with us on account of that bait and those material delights of the world. And that's just what they did. And that's how the fourth group of ascetics and Brahmins got free from Mara's power. The fourth group of ascetics and Brahmins is just like the fourth herd of deer. And where is it that Mara's assembly cannot go? There's lots of different like poetic verses, poetic imagery of the trail of awakened beings being like the trail of birds in the sky. Mara cannot see the trail. There's another imagery of a I forgot exactly what it was, a animal, I think, searching for something or something to that effect, and after somebody who was awakened had passed on, had died, parinibbana, and people came up to the Buddha and asked, where is this person, what is this being, what is it? And Buddha says, that's Mara trying to find the trail of this person, but they're awakened, so he'll never find it. Right? So where is it that Mara's assembly and his assembly cannot go? It's when a mendicant, quite secluded from sensual pleasures, secluded from unskillful qualities, the five hindrances, enters or remains in the first jhana, which has the rapture and bliss born of seclusion, while placing the mind and keeping it connected. This is called a mendicant who has blinded Mara, put out his eyes without a trace, and gone where the wicked one cannot see. Furthermore, as placing the mind and keeping it connected are stilled, a mendicant enters or remains in the second jhana, which has rapture and bliss born of immersion, with internal clarity and mind at one, without placing the mind and keeping it connected. This is called the mendicant who has blinded Mara. Furthermore, with the fading away of rapture, a mendicant enters and remains in the third jhana, where they meditate with equanimity, mindful and aware, personally experiencing the bliss of which the noble ones declare, equanimous and mindful, one meditates in bliss. This is called the mendicant who has blinded Mara. Furthermore, giving up pleasure and pain and ending former happiness and sadness, mendicant enters and remains in the fourth jhana, without pleasure or pain, with pure equanimity and mindfulness. This is called the mendicant who has blinded Mara. Furthermore, a mendicant going totally beyond the perceptions of form, with the ending of perceptions of impingement, not focusing on the perceptions of diversity, aware that space is infinite, enters and remains in the dimension of infinite space. So we just went over the four jhanas. Now we're going over the arupa attainments, the formless attainments. Sometimes people call them jhanas, but they're not technically jhanas. This is called the mendicant who has blinded Mara. Furthermore, a mendicant going totally beyond the dimension of infinite space, aware that consciousness is infinite, enters and remains in the dimension of infinite consciousness. This is called the person blind who has blinded Mara. Furthermore, a mendicant going totally beyond the dimension of infinite consciousness, aware that there is nothing at all, enters and remains in the dimension of nothingness. Furthermore, a mendicant who is going totally beyond the dimension of nothingness, enters and remains in the dimension of neither perception or non-perception. This is called the mendicant who has blinded Mara. Furthermore, a mendicant going totally beyond the dimension of neither perception nor non-perception, enters and remains in the cessation of perception and feeling, and having seen with wisdom their defilements come to an end. This is called the mendicant who has blinded Mara, put out his eyes without a trace, and gone where the wicked one cannot see, and they've crossed over clinging to the world. That is what the Buddha said. Satisfied, the mendicants were happy with what the Buddha said. All right, so any final comments, need for clarification, or anything about this sutta?
I find it interesting how the views are mentioned so explicitly, and then the next step is the jhanas. So you have the sense desires, views, and then jhanas. So it's almost sounds like it's saying that the jhanas are a place where the views aren't going to get in the way or be able to affect.
Well, they can't, right? Well, at least after the first jhana, it's like once you're past, vitaka and vichara are gone, you're not wrapped up in, those views, at least for the time being, right? You're not thinking about them. You've kind of gone beyond them, right? The jhanas are like a brief respite, right? They're a brief respite from, even you go to the fourth jhana, there's no pleasure and pain, no likes and dislikes. You've even given up for the time being liking and dislike, right? You just have equanimity, right? So these are, of course, what happens is you're not awakened. So guess what? You come out of jhana and Mara is waiting for you. It's like you came out of the door and Mara is a raven, look up in the tree waiting for you to come out of the door. Right? This is why I always joke with the Buddha. The Buddha mastered, all of these teachings, all of these practices before he became awakened with his teachers. And I always make the joke, because some traditions, they say that, like, if you're a jhana master, you can go into jhana for like 7 days. You just go, you meditate, and you just go into deep states, and you just can be there for a week. The joke I make is if Buddha would come out of the 7 days, and he'd be like, Dukkha's still there. I only escaped it temporarily. So there needs to be something more. But yeah, jhanas are a good temporary escape. They're also the best platform for seeing things as they are, especially the fourth jhana, because you don't have all the cloudiness and the gunk in the way, right? No pleasure and pain, no likes and dislikes, all of that kind of, all of those Sakaya ditthis, all of those identity views, they're all suppressed, they're all gone. And you start to be able to see things you couldn't see before. You start to really deeply see the three characteristics of existence and things like that. So. All right. So why don't we do some meditation? Meditate for like a half hour or so. And then after that, if there's any questions, we can do those. Or usually what I like to do after the meditation, as we're kind of rounding down the evening, is to read some Dhammapada verses. This kind of is a nice, calm, chill thing to do at the end. So we'll do that. So I will, because I usually on Dhammapalooza, because I don't know who's watching or who's going to be watching, I usually do a guided meditation on Dhammapalooza. So we'll do guided now. All right, set your body up in whatever position is stable and comfortable for you. We'll spend some time scanning through the body. We do this for two reasons. At the beginning of a meditation session, sitting down. The first is to slowly bring our mind from the external, the activities of the world and your day and your thoughts about the future, etc., to the internal, focusing on this mind and body. And the second reason we do this is to become intimately aware of how our posture impacts our ability to sit. Being able to see the body and the parts of the body in ever more detailed ways so that we can adjust our posture as needed. So start by bringing your focus and attention to your feet. By bringing focus and attention, I mean to focus in on whatever sensation or feeling arises at that part of the body, such as the feeling of the feet pressing against the floor, the cushion. Move up through the ankles, into the calves. If, as we're scanning through the body, you are having trouble connecting with a sensation, you can prompt yourself by asking, what do I see? What do I feel? And usually, a sensation will arise in your field of awareness. Moving up through the knees, into the thighs. If you're a bit more of an advanced meditator, know a little bit about your posture, The knees are a very important part of the posture, so you can put a strong focus on observing how the knees impact your posture. And how their position impacts pain and balance. Move up through to the hips and pelvis. If you're sitting on a cushion, this is an especially important part of the body to pay attention to for your posture. The position of the pelvis impacts both the legs and the spine. Pay close attention to how that works. As you're moving through the body, if you notice a small feeling of discomfort or a small imbalance, now is the time to adjust your posture as much as you need. The idea is to adjust your posture and set yourself up in such a position so that you minimize moving around while meditating. Be able to sit longer periods in comfort, or at least not so much pain. When you're ready, move up the spine through the abdomen and the chest. Checking that the spine is not leaning or slouching here or there, nor that you're trying to force it to be very straight, like a rod. The idea is to just let the spine rest naturally with its natural curve. Any kind of forced straightening or slouching will eventually cause some level of back pain as you sit for longer periods. Move up through to the shoulders, checking that they're hanging loosely. And then down through to the elbows and hands, observing how the position of the elbows and hands also impacts your posture. And finally up to the head. Just like the spine, you don't want the head to be leaning or slouching here or there. If the spine is resting comfortably, the head should just be able to also rest comfortably. Chin parallel to the floor. The spine and head position will allow you to have unimpeded breathing. When you're done setting up your body in a comfortable and stable position, let the body go and take 3 deep breaths. And then let the breath go. From here on in, try not to manipulate or control the breath in any way. Your body has been breathing from the moment you were born and will continue to do so until the second you die. It doesn't need you to do its job. Your job is to simply observe, investigate, and abide with the breath as the body breathes in and out. Now, as you follow your breath, pay attention to my instructions on the metta meditation we'll be practicing for this session. The practice of metta is done using words and visuals, but the words and visuals are not the practice itself. They're just a means to an end. The purpose of metta is to develop warm-hearted feelings of friendliness for all beings and to abandon all ill will, hatred, anger, resentment, envy in our minds. The words and visuals help us do this. And we'll be using words and visuals for this practice tonight. You can choose to use them or not. It's up to you. We'll be practicing exalted release of metta, exalted release of mind through metta. And we'll start by giving metta to the person we might have the most agitation towards, most ill will towards, maybe even hatred towards. That person is ourselves. We cannot hope to have goodwill and friendliness for all beings without having it for ourselves first. So if you like, you can imagine a sphere around you, a circle just big enough to fit around your body. And as we say the words of metta, bring up warm-hearted feelings. We want to pervade and perfuse, fill up that sphere like air filling up a balloon. Then we'll eventually spread that sphere out, encompassing larger and larger numbers of beings. But for now, have the sphere around you and repeat these words silently in your mind. May I find happiness. May I find peace. May I live in friendship with all beings. May I find release from suffering. When you say these words, they're not meant to be just repeated over and over fast like a mantra. When you say these words, try to feel them and have this strong wish that they be true, that you do what is good, that others know what is good, and that they find happiness and peace, release from suffering, etc. Fill that sphere of metta with all of your warm-hearted thoughts, thoughts of goodwill towards yourself. If you like, you can imagine an image of yourself in front of you, like looking in the mirror, and speak those words, send that goodwill to that image. Give your goodwill and friendliness to yourself like you would your best friend or close relative. May I find happiness. May I find peace. May I live in friendship with all beings. May I find release from suffering. One more time, continuing to fill that sphere around you with your goodwill and friendliness. Repeat. May I find happiness. May I find peace. May I live in friendship with all beings. May I find release from suffering. Now begin to spread your sphere out to encompass the entirety of whatever building you're in, pervading all the beings in that building, human, animal, insect, seen and non-seen beings, whatever beings there may be. Repeat the words. May all of us find happiness. May all of us find peace. May all of us live in friendship with each other. May all of us find release from suffering. We use the term all of us because you're always included. You are at the center of the sphere. So no matter how many other beings we include in our sphere as we make it larger, you are always there as well. Spread your sphere to encompass the entirety of whatever town, village, city you're in. Many beings, human, animal, insect, seen and unseen. May all of us in this town find happiness. May all of us find peace. May all of us live in friendship with each other. May all of us find release from suffering. Spread your sphere to encompass whatever state, region, or province you're in. May all of us in this state find happiness. May all of us find peace. May all of us live in friendship with each other. May all of us find release from suffering. Spread your sphere to encompass the entirety of whatever country you're in. May all of us in this country find happiness. May all of us find peace. May all of us live in friendship with each other. May all of us find release from suffering. Spread your sphere to encompass the entirety of our home planet. pale blue dot in a sea of darkness, with trillions of beings on the air, land, and sea. If you like, you can visualize the earth in your mind completely surrounded by your sphere of goodwill and friendliness. May all of us find happiness. May all of us find peace. May all of us live in friendship with each other. May all of us find release from suffering. Continue to spread your sphere ever larger out into the cosmos, encompassing the entirety of our Milky Way galaxy, hundreds of billions of stars and planets, who knows how many beings, where they may be. May all of us in this galaxy find happiness. May all of us find peace. May all of us live in friendship with each other. May all of us find release from suffering. Continue to spread your sphere out to infinity, encompassing the known universe and beyond, wherever there may be other beings in the samsaric state, siblings in suffering, other universes, dimensions, who knows what might be out there, where beings may be. Spread your sphere out to encompass all beings everywhere. May all of us everywhere find happiness. May we all find peace. May all of us live in friendship with each other. May all of us find release from suffering. slowly start to come back through the universe, to the planet, country, state, the room you're in, slowly opening your eyes, becoming familiar with the room and your bodily placed in it, moving from the internal to the external. Why don't we read some Dhammapada? And if anybody has any questions or anything like that, we can do that as well. But we'll read some Dhammapada. If you think of any questions, you can type them out or hello in the YouTube chat. Gayatri actually does have a question from before the meditation. Someone who has family responsibilities and needs to earn money, put kids through college, etc., attain fourth jhana. It's possible. It all depends on how much effort you're putting into it. Right? I wouldn't say that it's impossible, but I would say it's probably a lot harder. Yeah. Oh, hello, Gregory. Welcome. Yeah, the new time is close to my work hours. Yeah, sorry. I mean, well, actually, for people on the West Coast, it is literally during their work hours, isn't it? So this is how it goes. So at least for the next 3 weeks, we'll be here in North Carolina. And then we'll be back to normal Dhammapalooza time, Monday nights. All right. So let's bring up some Dhammapalooza. Dhammapada. All right, here we go. Share screen. So we are in the chapter on affection. Giving himself to things to be shunned and not exerting where exertion is needed. A seeker after pleasures, having given up his true welfare, envies those intent upon theirs. Seek not intimacy with the beloved, and also not with the unloved. For not to see the beloved and to see the unloved, both are painful. These are both in the definition of dukkha. Therefore, hold nothing dear, for separation from the dear is painful. There are no bonds for those who have nothing beloved or unloved. From endearment springs grief. From endearment springs fear. For one who is wholly free from endearment, there is no grief. Whence then fear? From affection springs grief. From affection springs fear. For one who is wholly free from affection, there is no grief. Whence then fear? From attachment springs grief. From attachment springs fear. For one who is wholly free from attachment, there is no grief. Whence then fear? From lust springs grief. From lust springs fear. For one who is wholly free of craving, there is no grief. Whence then fear? From craving springs grief. From craving springs fear. For one who is wholly free of craving, there is no grief. Whence then fear? People hold dear him who embodies virtue and insight, who is principled, has realized the truth, and who himself does what he ought to be doing. One who is intent on the ineffable, nibbana, dwells with mind inspired by supermundane wisdom, and is no more bound by sense pleasures. Such a man is called one bound upstream. When, after a long absence, a man safely returns from afar, his relatives, friends, and well-wishers welcome him home on arrival. As kinsmen welcome a dear one on arrival, even so his own good deeds will welcome the doer of good who has gone from this world to the next. This is always a tough one for a lot of people, right? Talking about affection, what does it say? Hold nothing dear. Right? There in the sutta where Visakha, is Visakha with us? Oh, Visakha is not with us. The sutta where Visakha loses a grandchild, and she had like 60 of them, by the way, which is, she was quite prolific in her children and grandchildren. But and the Buddha says, if you have 10 dear ones, you have 10 sufferings. You have one dear one, you have one suffering. If you have no dear ones, you have no suffering. Not easy, not an easy pill to swallow for a lot of people. This is where you get into a lot of deep Dhamma, but it is true though, isn't it? And you can at least acknowledge, some people will say, oh, well, you gotta, life has, its ups and downs, and, better to have loved and lost than never to have loved at all, etc. People will kind of come up with these different perspectives on things. The Buddha's pretty straightforward here. This is craving. It's so hard to understand, hard to see, and that's okay. No problem. It's really hard. It's hard to understand. All right. Also reminds me of the lost stuff. Reminds me of one of the only quotes from Yoda from Star Wars that's pure Buddhism. Right, when Anakin is afraid that the woman's going to die, Yoda says, "Train yourself to let go of everything you fear to lose." That's pure Buddhism right there. That's pure this section of the Dhammapada, isn't it? Train yourself to let go of everything you fear to lose. Can you do that? I don't know. That's a tough one, isn't it? All right, let's move to the next one. Anger. And I think after this one, we'll do some, if there's any final questions or anything, and then we'll close out. One should give up anger, renounce pride, and overcome all fetters. Suffering never befalls him who clings not to the mind and body and is detached. He who checks rising anger as a charioteer checks a rolling chariot, him I call a true charioteer. Others only hold the reins. Right? The chariot keeps going, they're holding the reins, and they're trying to like, whoa, stop. But the horse is out of control. The horse is not listening. The true charioteer controls their anger, checks their anger. Overcome the angry by non-anger. This is a very famous line. This is plucked out of the Dhammapada and used fairly often in Buddhist circles, and even in some non-Buddhist circles. I've seen this. Overcome the angry by non-anger. Overcome the wicked by goodness. Overcome the miser by generosity. Overcome the liar by truth. Speak the truth. Yield not to anger. When asked, give even if you only have a little. By these three means can one reach the presence of the gods. Those sages who are inoffensive and are ever restrained in body go to the deathless state, where having gone, they grieve no more. Those who are ever vigilant, who discipline themselves day and night, and are ever intent on nibbana, their defilements fade away. O Atula, indeed, this is an ancient practice, not one only of today. They blame those who remain silent. They blame those who speak too much. They blame those who speak in moderation. There is none in the world who is not blamed. And if you read the suttas, you'll see that even the Buddha is blamed by some people. Right, this is very, very accurate statement. There is none in the world who is not blamed. Haters are going to hate. People are not going to like you, no matter how good you try to be. There's no one in the world who is not blamed. There never was, there never will be, nor is there now a person who is wholly blamed or wholly praised. But the man whom the wise praise, after observing him day after day, is one of flawless character, wise and endowed with knowledge and virtue. Who can blame such a one as worthy as a coin of refined gold? Even the gods praise him. By Brahma, too, he is praised. Let a man guard himself against irritability and bodily action. Let him be controlled in deed. Abandoning bodily misconduct, let him practice good conduct in deed. Let a man guard himself against irritability in speech. Let him be controlled in speech. Abandoning verbal misconduct, let him practice good conduct in speech. Let a man guard himself against irritability in thought. Let him be controlled in mind. Abandoning mental misconduct, let him practice good conduct in thought. The wise are controlled in bodily action, controlled in speech, and controlled in thought. They are truly well controlled. All right. So, any final questions, comments, need for clarification before we call it a night? We'll be back Thursday night, I should say. Same time, 6 to 9. Although this is the Thursday night session will be in the same way that Aya does it. There's no mixing session for Thursday nights. So this is just going to be like Aya's normal Thursday night session. And then we'll be doing another mixed session on Saturday at 3 p.m. I'm going to attempt to do a joint Zoom and Insight Timer stream. We'll see how this goes. Hopefully it'll go well. I'm gonna have to test and see if the tech can do it, but we'll be back Thursday night at 6, and then Saturday, but also tomorrow, because Aya usually has a Wednesday morning at 10:30. While I'm here, it's been combined into Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. I do morning monastery experience. So it's a half hour of, like if you were staying at a monastery, what you'd get after morning meditation, like a little chanting, precepts, a little Dhamma talk, etc. So we'll be doing that. I'll be on the Zoom tomorrow at 8 a.m. for that. And then after that half hour, there's another half hour of just meditation. So we'll be doing that tomorrow morning at 8. And I think then we're good. Let's see, anybody? Nothing in the YouTube chat. All right, friends. Well, Sukhi Hotu, may you be well and at ease. Practice well and be well. May you have a spiritually successful and peaceful practice until we meet again. And Amy, by the way, just so that you know, if you can come at 7 on Tuesdays, we are doing Dhammapalooza style, so we're not just if you want to get involved in questions and sutta reading and stuff, that goes for everybody who's used to Aya's thing where they might come a little bit later. For Tuesdays, we are Dhammapalooza style. So we'll be doing meditation, not first off, but probably closer in the middle. All right, everybody. Have a good night.